the Coop to raise some awareness of asexuality and the other events that we have going on throughout the year. And then on next Thursday, the 27th, will also be a speaker here with dinner provided, who will be speaking about the intersection of the asexuality and bisexuality identity and how our sort of social understandings of both have sort of emerged, like kind of developed and then emerged and followed similar paths. And so there'll be some myth debunking and talking about the historic roots of both bisexuality and asexuality. So we invite you to join us for that as well. We are here at the Center for Women's Studies. All right. So while we wait for Mike, I guess we get it right before he comes. While we wait for Michael, he has been in town already. Last night he hosted a dinner for, I think it was the Kobe Jewish Student Union, or at least it happened in this house. My understanding is, was anyone there for the dinner last night? How'd it go?
It was great.
Yeah.
I'm sure that his speech will be equally fun as
Equally
last
fun.
night.
Yes, he has a very rich background, a cultural background in area of research that I will talk about in the bio before I come. But he, draws from elements of African American culture and Jewish culture and some traditions from the South, from the slave era South. That this will be what he'll be primarily talking about today. Actually, is about how slaves during the slave era negotiated spaces around gender and sex in their domestic work. I'm getting a text that they are in the car now, so let me go ahead. Michael W. Twitty is a noted culinary and cultural historian. Created Afro Culinaria, which is a blog that is the first blog devoted to African American historic foodways and their legacies. He appeared on Bizarre Foods America with Andrew Zimmerman, Many Rivers to Cross with Henry Louis Gates, and lectured to more than 200 groups, including Yale, Oxford, and Carnegie Mellon Universities, and the Smithsonian Institution. He's spoken around the world, from the MAD Symposium in Copenhagen, Barbican Theatre in London, and the Jerusalem's Jewish Film Festival, where he spoke on culinary justice and the African American impact on Southern foodways, and the complexities of his identity as a gay African American Jewish man. HarperCollins will release Twitty's first major book in 2017 called The Cooking Gene, which traces his ancestry through food. He was recently named one of 50 people changing the South by Southern Living, and one of the 5 chef activists to watch, as well as a TED Fellow. We're very happy that he can join us today. Yes, please put your hands together and welcome Michael Twitty.
Let's get to my PowerPoint. And we'll do the rest. All right. Good morning, Good morning. Hanging outdoors here. This is awesome. All right. So, no.
Okay.
I'm a Baptist preacher.
Ah.
A black rabbi, either way. So, good morning. I am lucky to be alive. I just survived being in Mississippi, which is always a credit to a black man. Getting in and out of there alive. I was at Ole Miss. In fact, they call it Ole Miss. You know why they call it Ole Miss? Why? That's it. It's literally canned black dialect. Ole Miss is, yes. D. And by the way, everywhere, the hotels, the Inn at Ole Miss, which by the way, I don't recommend you staying at, because half the toilets are side saddle. You have, exactly. How the hell do you have a toilet that have no leg room on the side? Side saddle. I mean, like a lady rides a horse in the old saddle, side saddle. I mean, ridiculous. So, let me put this in. Yes. Okay. And then again, the hotel's Wi-Fi password was Go Ribs. Can't get away from it. Can't. And so I was encouraged by the fact that, you know, the new mascot is technically a big black bear.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. No, this is not like my Grindr profile pictures. That would be both thrilling and embarrassing. And should I be ready to manually go in? Okay, cool. Somebody said, "Oh."
Yeah, you can just use those things.
Okay, cool. I'm perfectly happy doing this kind of like sitting down like actor studio thing. All right, so never go alone with me, y'all. I promise you. And I almost came here in my slave clothes and scared the hell out of y'all. I'm running away. Well, 39 years a slave. Yeah, that's America. So, I am here. Okay, so you've heard a little bit about me. I'm 39. I've been working on this for most of my life. I was a little kid who was just very intrigued with my grandparents and their world, and the world of their parents and their grandparents, etc. And that's a very difficult thing to explain to people growing up, that you're kind of like fixated on this history, this culture. And then you realize that there's not a lot of people doing into this. It's a very lonely kind of thing. So it's a struggle to find your people. And my people are historic interpreters. My people are museum educators, public history people. My people are cultural material historians. My people are cooks, chefs, and people who cook in the home. And beyond that, people who have, you know, emphasis on spirituality, religion. So you can imagine this black, gay, Jewish thing gets kind of lonely after a while, you know. So you're always trying to find community and always trying to find family. And that's why, you know, my most recent project, the Southern Discomfort Tour turned into the Cooking Gene, which is a book in the works with HarperCollins. And it's because I'm constantly looking for family. And DNA and genetics, you know, I'm still getting a lot of crap with that. We're all related. And those of us who admit a certain amount of evolution, we're all from Africa. That's not the same. When you're black in the diaspora, you cut off. You don't know where you come from. You're not rooted. So you're always looking for where you come from. Other people have the advantage of looking at, you know, so some of you in this room are 1, 2, 3 generations. So you can always go back to and say, that's where I'm from. Black people can't do that. That's why we pissed off all the time. Right? We don't have that. We don't have that. So for me, the process of going through 15, 16 different DNA tests with different members of my family and myself, you know, we met yesterday. It was like, he says, I'm from St. Vincent, the Grenadines. And I was able to say, I have cousins, distant cousins I don't know on a computer screen from there. But being able to say that, I couldn't say that 5, 10 years ago. Or being able to say, I am, you know, my ancestors came from Senegal, they came from Ghana, they came from Sierra Leone, which they did. They came from Congo and Angola, they came from Nigeria. Being able to say that has been a miracle, revelation, because now I feel more rooted. I feel like the stories that I've been studying my whole life make sense. I'll give you a good example. Wait a minute. Is there a way to play something from the internet here?
Yeah.
Okay, great, because I want them to see this, what happened to me in Stagville. We could do that, that's awesome. Because I don't want to tell you, I want to show you. That's what we say in the Black community. I can show you, but I can tell you. So, and it's on YouTube. It's my African Ancestry Reveal. So I did a dinner at a plantation. I invited Paula Dean to this dinner, and I had this. Hold on. Look, I didn't invite her for some lemonade. Hold on. It's Michael Twitty, African Ancestry Reveal. It's on YouTube. Hopefully YouTube will come up. Yes, perfect. Okay, so we did this dinner in Durham, North Carolina, at Stagville Plantation, which was the largest plantation in North Carolina history. 900 enslaved people worked there, lived and died there. Paula Dean had her snafu. I wrote her a letter that came viral. Good on me, because that's the only thing that saved my black ass. And then I'm actually praying that Paula Dean puts out a lawn jockey any minute now, so I can write her another letter. But that's another story. But basically, everybody and their mother called me, and Huffington Post published it the next day, and blah blah blah. And all the stuff I was doing, stuff became amplified. And I invited her to this dinner, and I said, I'm doing this dinner at this plantation in North Carolina. I want you to really learn where your whole cakes and your project come from, and learn respect for the people you've drawn a lot of your creative source from. By the way, I also met her. The woman who actually ran her kitchen this past weekend in Mississippi, Dora Charles, was a beautiful cookbook artist. She's from Savannah. And I'm just like, yeah, Dora Charles is the brain behind that whole massive industry you call Paula Dean. And those are her recipes. And it's just like, I called it without even knowing her. So I invite her to this dinner. No, she doesn't write me back. No, she doesn't show up. Of course not. But I want to sort of give you, this is a great way to give you a little bit of context about who I am, and then we're going to talk about our subject at the end, which is what does it mean to bring these people to life in the kitchen, and how does gender and sexuality, how those things play a role in how you reconstitute these folks, our ancestors. Okay, just press this button.
Yeah.
Okay. What about sound?
My name is Michael W. Twitty, and I am a culinary historian from Washington, D.C. area. I do a lot of work in covering the African American contribution to American foodways and the journey of food from Africa to America, from slavery to freedom. What motivated me was the fact that I've been staring at a map of the continent of Africa my entire life. One that my grandfather gave to me with all the different ethnic groups listed on that map, going, which one am I? Where do I come from?
What you are seeking in your journey, may your strength, may your connections to your heritage be strengthened in this process, and may you receive the blessings of our community and of our heritage.
What I'm here to do today is to tell Michael where in Africa he shared maternal ancestry and paternal ancestry, if it is African. Because I can't guarantee it's going to be African.
Right? Gina asked me, where do you want to reveal this? Mr. Coach Saul said, I want to reveal this on the grounds of historic plantation because that's the place I want to reclaim. This is something I have been dreaming about since I was a little kid.
So, slavery was a business, right? they actually got enslaved Africans from this country because of their ability to farm rice and brought them specifically to South Carolina to farm the rice plantation. So you share maternal ancestry with the Mende people living in Sierra Leone today. Congratulations. The people with whom you share paternal ancestry have created a whole language with symbols that are called Adinkra symbols. And one of the most popular Adinkra symbols is Sankofa. And the meaning of Sankofa is we must go back and reclaim our past in order to move forward. So it is with great pleasure that I tell you that you share paternal ancestry with the Akan people living in Ghana today. Congratulations.
I'm not trying to tread on anybody's belief system, but I've always said my ancestors are my board of directors. Charleston, Mende, Rice, Akan. Yeah.
Now you're part of the African ancestry family.
Thank you. This is
Welcome.
awesome. Awesome.
I feel stupendous. I just feel like the things that I've spent researching a long time, they're real. I feel like I need to figure out the next way to get to Sierra Leone and the next way to get to Ghana and just,
This video will always be like,
so I'm learning. So I'm ready to go. And I'm just thankful.
So that was a hell of a day. I was up for 36 hours. We cooked the entire meal the way it would have been prepared 150 years ago. Those buildings you saw in the back, those were the 4 remaining slave cabins. And they were built in like the 1840s, and they were lived in through the 1960s. And they were not what you would think. Great. This little thing is like warning, a black gay Jew is talking. But thank you. But yeah, like it's they're not what you would think. They were actually like duplex. These were like the original projects. I'm making this up. So you had 4 rooms, 2 rooms on each floor, and 12 people to a room. So those 4 cabins, you do the math. Then there was a 5th building which turned into a one sharecropper family took it over and totally painted it over and took out the floors, so it became a different kind of structure. But it was still one of the slave cabins, and the overseer's house was still there too. And this was 1/4. This weren't. It's not like in your textbook. The plantations look like little villages, and the master's house was here, the little gardens here, and the slaves were there. No, these were basically out, huge tracts of land. And do you know who lives on the land that these former enslaved people worked and died on? It was a 10,000-acre plantation. You'll never guess. Bernie Madoff is imprisoned at the Butner facility, which is located on the former grounds of the plantation. What kind of irony is that? I've been wanting to go make him some food, especially a chocolate pie. So this is another plantation in North Carolina, not Stackville, Somerset Place. It's at the end of the world, literally. You go this road that literally buckles and bumps, throws you up in the air. The car must fly in the air. And over 200 and something years old, and way over 1780 something. And these little girls, who I bet you are now like teenagers now, they are or teenagers. Their great grandmother was there. She was making she had pear butter, best pear butter you ever had in your life, and other preserves and stuff. And I interviewed her, and I said to her, I said, what's your connection to this place? And she said, my grandparents were enslaved here, and their parents, and their parents, and their parents, and their parents. So these little girls pounding this rice, this mortar and pestle, had no clue that, they had fun. They did this for like 40 minutes. I didn't care. I just like the fact that they just were, in this place where their ancestors became Americans. It's not a lot of black people that can say that. That doesn't happen very often. I mean, the average enslaved person was sold 2 to 3 times in their lifetime, which interrupts, the flow of the generations, who you are. The reason why I was 36 hours being up and making the food over the open fire and iron pots and all that nonsense. That was making me very emotional and very, I hit a point when you saw me being videotaped. It was the fact that my direct maternal grandmother, my second great grandmother said, "I ain't got no nigga blood in me. I ain't no nigga." Her mother said, "No, it's all a big mistake. I'm not actually black. I'm white." You look at their pictures, you might not be able to tell that they're black at all. And then to find out that not only was that line African, an L haplogroup, L2 haplogroup, but that it was Mende. A week before, I was in Copenhagen, Denmark, and I was invited by Renee Redzepi to be part of the Mad Symposium. And something happened with a certain famous Southern chef, who shall remain nameless, who kind of dissed me, and right on the spot. And so I went up there hot. I said it was this log, and I basically said my culinary justice bit is about how, it's not about. I don't want to simplify it to appropriation and not appropriation. It's not what it's about. It's about we have foods in the world, traditions and dishes that become, amplified when other people get their hands on them. But when the people who create them do it, it's always low caste. It's always, they're paid less for it. I'm sorry, but why should the mom and pop business, the folks who are Salvadorian, Korean, Lebanese, what have you, why do they gotta charge $5, but then you go across town, it's 15, 20, 25, upsell. Same thing happened with Carolina Gold rice. Our ancestors were brought to make this rice, and the know-how to grow rice came from them from Africa. And they made billionaires out of white people. And they created, Charleston, one of the richest cities in the South. And now Charleston has a food revival based on their legacy. But you don't see one single black restaurant in Charleston. There's one they always talk about, but it's on the other side of the tracks. And quite frankly, the gentrification, everything else going on there is just designed to make sure that only certain people get to benefit from this legacy. So I was really hot about that, And I was all ready to talk about kumbaya, we shall overcome, and how black people need to get together and eat food, blah, blah, welcome table, all that other nonsense. But then I got angry and I started talking about Carolina Gold rice and banging my head. I mean, I was like, Malcolm X and Nat Turner were in the front row looking at me going, and I'm like doing this, and I had no clue. And I'm basically going, give us back our rice, having no clue that I was actually talking about my own roots. That wasn't just, that didn't come out of anywhere. So when you see me burst into tears, I'm going, damn, I was talking about me. Because that third great grandma was born in Charleston. She could have been anything. It's a big toss-up. Charleston was an international port. So she could have been anything. But she wasn't anything. She was part of one of 20 ethnic groups where the women in particular were kidnapped and brought to the South to grow rice, because the women were the rice growers. The men cleared the land, and the men burned the brush. And when at harvest time, the men and women come together to work again. Because let's start the gender conversation right now. In traditional West African cultures plural, there is usually a gender divide in terms of labor. It is not based on strength. It's based on strictly upon cosmological and spiritual ideas. So there's no assumption that a woman is lesser because she does this work. It's just like women do this, men do this, and this is back and forth. We're working in common to obtain the same goal, which is domestic tranquility. Men are also in charge of the outside realm of the compound, and women are the compound. There is no assumption of one is weak and one is strong, If you've ever seen a West African woman, you know, pound fufu, you know that the strong is definitely the woman. You know, those things are heavy. They are not for the weak at all. It's really funny to see me try to do that. And it's like, okay, I can make a lot of dirty jokes with being a top, but I won't. But it's just like the thing. It's just like, and the fact that when I learned how to do this, all the straight people are like, what's he talking about? then the happy all going, oh. When I learned how to do this, a woman from Senegal, and by the way, I just found a cousin from my grandfather's 5th cousin moved from Senegal this past week. Wow. She actually showed me how to do this. She didn't speak any English. Wolof, Sarah, Fula. That's it. No French, no English. Which is fascinating. I mean, she was from the Way country in Senegal. They wasn't from Dakar, where everybody's international and sophisticated. And she showed me, she says, you really want to learn how to do this? Translator. I said, yeah. Wow. I said, wow. She said, okay. By the way, the word wow, you say wow, in English comes from Wolof wow. Just like the word okay comes from Wolof. Yakke. Wow. All these words that you hear. Today the rabbi gave me a banana for breakfast. Bananas are the Wolof word. We're surrounded by these Africanisms and don't even know it. The food we eat. So when we eat the food, and you know, the Wolof women were, and Senegambian women were chosen to be the cooks. The cooks in Bahia, the cooks in Haiti, the cooks in New Orleans, the cooks in Charlotte, cooks in Annapolis, and Richmond, and Philadelphia. And so these women are raising white children, right? And they're going, what does every woman have to do, every parent have to do, every man have to do when they're sitting up there trying to teach a kid to eat? Kids want to eat, they're picky. They go, come on, eat up, eat up. In Yiddish, we say essen, right? And so Wolof, it's yum. So you think about a little white kid hearing that word, yum, yum. And of course, in English, we don't have the NY sound. So the kid drops the NY, yum, yum, yummy. Every time you look in the dictionary, it says, origin, I know they talk about Negroes. Every single time. You can just see us waving behind the word. You know, there's black people here. You know, origin, no. We don't know where that word came from. That's really where it's at. And by the way, I'll remind me later to tell you how we invented Starbucks. Now, but you got to remind me because I'll forget. All right, cool. So she teaches me this, and she was no joke. She looked at me and she said, "Okay, a man wants to know how to use a mortar and pestle." Okay, cool. So she takes the mortar and pestle, and she starts off slow. Okay, this is what you got to do. Boom, boom, boom. And this thing is heavy. I'm like, I didn't even look at it. She's like, yeah, it's heavy. And she just looks at me and she goes, I understood that. And so then she goes, okay, let me show you some tricks, kid. And so what you do is you go, that's the sound of the knocking the mortar and pestle against the sides to clear off any sort of fufu or rice or whatever, and then back to work. And then she starts with the serious rhythm, you know. And she started throwing it up in the air. And the cool part was that she looked at me for a good, now in African cultures, you don't sustain eye contact for very long. That's reserved for very serious, intense moments. We don't do that. We didn't look at our mamas in the eye. Unless we were told to. Right? And they don't understand it. They don't understand what it means to get smacked because you went like this. Child, remember that? And you thought you were getting away with something too. And you went, next thing you know, right? Like a ninja in the wind, baby. Cast iron skillet. That's how we just go with it. Cast iron seasoning. Wow. Then you blacked out. But you went. Y'all have this happen. I actually caught the pan. That's how I learned how to cook. So he sat up there, and she looked at me, and she sustained eye contact, and she starts throwing it up in the air, and then she would and clap and like catch it, and then she'd throw it up and clap and catch it, clap and catch. Never took her eyes off of me. and just kept this up. It never failed to get to the bottom. And then she went, and just kept looking at me, looking off in distance, showing me she could do this without even looking. And I was like, wow. So I thought about this. You know, these plantations, you're forbidden to use your drum. But you can still do this every morning with your rice or your corn. You can still transmit those drum beats. And then the same thing happens. You clapping while you doing this work. So, black people, we work and play at work. That's why y'all have a problem with us. We work. They're not getting any work done. No, we just play at work and play. That's how we survive. And so these songs come up. And so when I talk to younger audiences, kids will automatically go, oh, that's like hip hop. You're like talking and rhyming and singing with a beat and clapping. I said, yes. It's call and response. It's gospel. It's hip hop. It's blues. It's all of our music traditions. It's jazz. It's all of it. All of it. The food is connected directly with everything else. And just like, Facebook is a great place for inane, stupid arguments. So somebody went off on me talking about, I said to them, they're like, the ancestors are turning their grave because all of our dirty lyrics in hip hop. And I said, what about the dirty lyrics in the blues? Were they turning the grave then? And they're like, that doesn't, what are you talking about? That doesn't matter. And I said, yes, it does. And I said, do you know anything about your ancestral culture? And I said, what kind of songs get sung when women are doing their work and men doing work in the field? I'm going to tell you, they're sexual. When the women do the mortar and pestle, one of the more infamous things that the married women will talk about, and this is especially dangerous in a polygamous household. I'm not going to go very far with this, because I'm a Southern gentleman there, ladies. But just the fact that they go, my husband knows how to pound this grain. Oh. But in the field, the rice field, they have these specific tools which are used to get the rice field ready, and the men are singing their version, which is, my wife likes me to, and little kids are hearing this. And they're just like, okay, cool. They're not really getting that this is a very, kind of our NC-17 R-rated, X-rated conversation. But there's no shame in this. Because this is the next generation coming to be. This is how you do. And it's also celebration, it's a way of celebrating romance sexuality. It really isn't, prurient. And so this is how we do. When Jill Scott, talks about, do you want on your rice and gravy? Do you want on your biscuits, baby? This is us. We sing about these things. We celebrate life. So we know that one day there won't be a life. And we'll be ancestors. So we sing about these things and celebrate our sexuality. This is the verb behind a lot of Caribbean Latin stuff, Afro-Latin culture. People go, oh, Brazil, they're so sexual, free, and liberal. No, they're so African. Shaking that bunda is an African thing. The word bunda is from Angola. It means your booty. So, yeah, it's a part of us. So it goes into food. My mother, a blessed memory, my mother passed away 2 years ago. I asked my mother, what is the best thing you ever cooked? And my mother said to me, a little black boy named Michael. I baked him long and slow. And I just felt, I was like, yeah, I did the same thing. I had an Al Jolson Mammy moment. But I really love that from my mom because, our tradition, that whole phrase about the oven, the womb, and the maternal thing is in being cooked. That I didn't know. I talked to Fran Nassar. Her name was very difficult to pronounce. She's a white lady married Ghanaian, and her name was really hard to pronounce. I call her Fran Nassar. Let's call her Fran Nassar. You can look her up later. And Fran says to me, "This is what your Ghanaian ancestors were saying. That's what they say. That the child is cooked, is baked, is prepared. That the whole process of cooking is the same process of procreation and having a child, and raising a child is like cooking." And that, food goes hand in hand with birth, death, marriage, rites of passage. It's all part of the same cycle. There's no separation. And traditionally in West African societies, women do the cooking, but men do the meat cooking, en masse ceremonially. So if you ever think about the idea of in the South, black men who barbecue, hear it right now. That's right. That's Mississippi, Alabama talking, so you know it's right. By way of Chicago, but that's right. There is a gendered way of cooking. When our ancestors are brought to America and the Americas, what happens is there's a gender disrupt. So this traditional line of men do this, women do this is interrupted. So who does textiles in West Africa? Anybody know? Like the kente cloth. Men. Do you see the men with the whole weaving thing, and they're fast and they just go back and forth, making the kente quilt. That's a men weave. But in America, who makes the quilts and who weaves? The women, Western European. So in a Western European context, chefing is a man thing, cooking is a woman thing. This is very difficult for me to even think about. Chef Vivian Howard, she's from North Carolina. Just gorgeous human being who has a show on PBS called Chef's Life. We had a nice talk last year. We're hanging around in Mississippi now. Her and me talking the middle of the square in Mississippi under the Confederate monument was just a bit much. I'm just thinking about this conversation could not have been had, ever so. But she says to me, "Why does everything male chefs have to do be killing it, murdering it? I don't go in the kitchen to go to war. I go in the kitchen to nourish and to create family and all this." He says, for me, it's not a feminine thing or woman thing. It's just a thing of being hospitable. But she says everything has to be smash it, kill it, nail it. I mean, just a language of violence and with a little tinge of sexual tension there as well, right? And I just said, I'm so tired of testosterone trucks. I'm going to go on a personal tangent about food trucks in a second. Because, I watch, people always look to me, you should be a food channel. I said, I don't want to be in communion with these people. Because, look at this. They show people on Food Network. Everybody's a white boy with tattoos at the arm and the beard, who chain smokes and drinks bourbon for a living. I'm just like, okay, and then with a baseball cap. That's cool. I see you. But that ain't me. And furthermore, it's like this. I look at these guys and what's on their menu? The comfort food of their mothers. Oh, and they're smashed and killed and murdering and it's this hyper testosterone, hyper bro version of women's comfort foods. Only they can do it better. Anything you can do, I can do better. I have a penis, so I can do it better than you. Get out of here. Look, unless you got them 5 kids tugging at your skirt, and I don't mean to archetype one type of woman, but for real, unless you got that 5 kids tugging at you, talking about mom, and you can still make that food truck menu happen, then we'll talk. But you ain't never done that, so I have a real issue with that kind of thing. And it's always that kind of comfort food based thing or whatever. It just annoys me. But she got me thinking. I never thought about this before. I never really thought about how violent that language sounded or how hyper masculine it sounded or all those pieces. And I never use those terms because I'm just like, I'm not trying to kill you. I'm just trying to feed you. That's what we do. But in terms of my work, in terms of historic interpretation, what time do we have? I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see. Okay, 12, 15? What time are we supposed to be done? 12:30? Sure. Or whatever? Okay. I'll make this work. Me and my first time in a Wrightsville, South Carolina. But I want to show you something very in particular. Y'all hungry yet? Carnivores and omnivores in the room. But yeah, they go to the brothers. Now you look on TV and look at barbecues, the Bubbas. And take it from the brothers to the Bubbas. So this is what food and slavery is about power. And what I saw across the Americas as I do my research is that black male chefs were very common. There's a mistaken sort of history where we go, all the the roots of soul food are all in the hands of the women. No, not when you come to the Americas. Black men are cooking in the French Caribbean, they're cooking in Brazil, in Jamaica, they're cooking in the South, they're cooking in the North. And they're sometimes cooking alongside their wives, which is a very interesting dynamic of, what does this black man have to do to protect his wife from the sexual advances of these white men, which he often cannot do. The kitchen floor is a dangerous place. The kitchens, by the way, in the South in particular, were separate. In the North, they were part of the same household because of the warmth factor. And the buildings were made out of stone and rock, whereas in the South, it's wood. So you're going to want to burn your house down. So you had a separate kitchen, which also kept away heat, the smells, everything else. Because the kitchens were very, you killed animals in the kitchen. You did other stuff in the kitchen. The kitchen's also a very dangerous place for the black woman, because this is the place where most of the so-called miscegenation actually happens. This is why my grandmothers on my maternal line looked white. This was generation after generation after generation. And it's critical that people realize that for us, those kitchen spaces are serious trigger spaces. Because a lot of bad stuff went down. A lot of bad stuff went down. And this is the same space where if you go to southern plantations and farms, which I encourage you to do at least once in your life to see what goes on, how they reinterpret this history, they almost never interpret them as a space. They interpret them as, this is where the great southern cuisine was created. And all in comfort, and everybody was happy, and the Negroes got the leftovers at the end of the day, and it was fantastic. Never talking about the other elements. One of my least favorite stories, but it's a true story, is one of the enslaved women talked about, her face was disfigured. And she said, what happened to your eye? She says, my mistress put out a biscuit, and the biscuit sat there for 5 days. Now, by this time, you can imagine this biscuit back in 18 whatever is probably pretty stale for 5 days. But it was testing her. She's hungry. The kids were hungry. They didn't eat. They were not well nourished. They weren't well taken care of. They were hungry. And so basically, she said that she finally gave her the temptation. She ate the biscuit. She tried to pass it off on something else. Well, the mistress knew what happened. So she put her on her rocking chair, her face. And that's how she became disfigured. Think about it. And so it's just like, wow, the kitchen was a very dangerous place for black women and black men. What I found out, though, is that as a gay black man, I was a man, period, in this food business. In terms of food chefing, it's very male. But in my world, food writing and food history is very female. And so I'm one of the only men in the room and the only black man in the room, typically. Only man of color in the room. So it gets very kind of weird and lonely for me. But then I was like, wait a minute, our men folk were doing a lot of cooking. And they were heterosexual. Sometimes their women lived apart from them. Sometimes the women worked alongside them. And they were also like dual. So that I might be the chef and my wife might be the head female domestic on a large plantation. Or in a small operation, we might be taking care of all those little jobs you might ascribe to 15 people. We're doing all of it. The gardening, the ironing, this, that, the laundry, all of it. And our children. And then the other folks are doing the field work. So if you think about the average plantation is 25 to 45 people. It's not a lot. Because the biggest ones had 100 to 500. They were very rare. But those were rice and sugarcane plantations. The average cotton plantation, 40 people would do. The average tobacco plantation, about 20 people would do in the field. And the rest of your workforce was in the house with you. But if you didn't have that, you were a white family that worked alongside your enslaved workforce. And typically the woman would work alongside with the woman in the household. In which case you did not have a male cook, because having a man cook alongside your wife was black. So Rabbi Dina brought up something really smart yesterday, something I didn't think about. I was wondering why Esteban Montejo from Cuba, and who was enslaved himself, Gilberto Frei, who was a scholar from Brazil, they talked about homosexuals in the kitchen who were black. So I'm intrigued. This is my version of Roots. And I'm looking at them and I'm going, Oh, okay. So she brought up a very good point. Who else would you have in your kitchen as a black male than a gay man next to your white woman? I was like, brilliant. You kept me up with that one. Brilliant. Because I didn't, that's what happened to George Washington Carver. There's a lot of debate on it. You know what happened to George Washington Carver? George Washington Carver had a high-pitched voice. There's a debate, but I think it's pretty much, I'm on the side of the story. I don't think it's an urban legend. George Washington Carver was castrated. He was raised by a white family. Around little white girls and white women. They didn't like that. Listen to his recordings, his voice is high-pitched. So Esteban Monteo talks about how they would actually kind of seek out effeminate boys to be working the house in Cuba. And Joe Botafrey talks about how the best cooks in Brazil were black homosexual men. And then in America, you have these, you read these journals and you see the black gay presence. My favorite is Robert, who was enslaved not very far from where I live in Maryland. And he was on one of the Calvert plantations. And his mistress was Rosalie Calvert, who was Belgian. And she can't get enough of talking bad about Robert. Robert's a great cook, but Robert is, quote, sassy and impudent and rolls his eyes at me constantly. That ain't It's like, and I can hear Robert. You better get up back in the big house, but you still got a chance. Oh, no. So, bye, Rosalie. There's Rosalie right there. Where's it, Becky? I think it's Becky. Taylor Swift. No, it's Becky. No, that's actually a good friend of mine, Blair. And her name was Blair, right? It's like, they really improved, didn't we? But no, we actually orchestrated this. Those are real black people, which I am one. That's a real white girl. And that's a real food. And that's a real red Blair. And actually, everything in that house, except for us, was in that house when that house was in the Civil War. Everything, the table. That's why we're not putting anything down on the table, because everything in the house really is period belongs to that family. I don't know how they got it all, but they did. But we actually did a whole thing at that plantation where we cooked the food and then brought it to the table. We wanted to orchestrate the process of what it meant to serve the master. What did that mean? What would she do? We wanted the pictures to be in color so that people could understand. We're not talking about some woodcut in the textbook. We're talking about how this is real life for 300 sustained years without an end. So we've been in slavery longer than we've been in freedom. But I want people to understand that. And so one of the things that I saw was started looking at runaway ads of freedom seekers, and I found 3 to date that were black men who dressed up as women who ran away from slavery. Were probably very successful. One did it twice and got away the second time. Other one was successful the first time. And the way they're described goes like this. They talk about them wearing these women's clothes. They're probably wearing women's clothes. Or wearing women's clothes. And they say this. Affects the manner of a woman. And there's no judgment. Can sew, can cook, is very, one of them described as very thin, very girly looking, and very just kind of like, you couldn't tell the difference. Space, you got the clothes on, like they all made it out to freedom. But they're all described in the same way. And it boggled my mind because, one of the things that you hear about as black person's country is black gay people didn't exist. Right. Before James Baldwin, we didn't exist. Or before Langston Hughes, wherever they want to draw the line. Right. And it's like we didn't exist. And if we did exist, we were corrupted. Well, the first instance of homosexuality being criminalized in America was two black men. Well, I shouldn't say black men. One was a black man, one was a black boy, and that was the New Netherlands. So it is, this is we've been here forever. We've been here forever. And going back to the Wolof, what's very interesting is that in the Wolof and Sera cultures, there is a third gender category, and it's inhabited by men and women. For men, they're called Glortigen, which literally means men, women. and they are the cooks. They're also storytellers. They're also shamans. Hello. That's, you know, I feel a rootedness in that. Like, I didn't have that before. I didn't have that narrative of, yeah, something's in the genes. Okay, I could deal with that. Being a storyteller, being the good dancers too, I can cut a rug. Some of the old cats in here will know what I'm talking about. I can percolate, but anybody else can percolate. Honey, that's ain't nobody in DC can percolate better than me. Oh, ma'am. But it's something to take pride in because now you feel connected and rooted. Let me think about how that picture makes you feel, and note that my like ditty bag is in the picture very prominent. My hoodoo, my little hoodoo bag, right in front of old Mrs. Telling her my culture didn't die. You can't take everything away from me. This is mine. This is my. It's followed right where my heart is. You know, so that element's in there as well. But you know, think about this. You know what this is? It's called a punka. I'm going to take 5 extra minutes of your time, and we'll if anybody has to run in that after that 5 minutes, great. If you have questions, that's great too. It's called a punka. Note the string. This is in Natchez, Mississippi. That was carved by an enslaved craftsman. How beautiful it is. Out of mahogany. The wood had to be imported from the West Indies. And punka, the word comes from Indian Sanskrit, and it literally means wing. So anyone's familiar with Sufi culture, it, you know, this is the same, the word for the fan that they fan the Adi Granth, which is a sacred book. And when the British were in India, they brought this custom and culture out, and they brought it to the South. And so the punka was used to fan the table. My great-great-grandfather did this in Virginia, but he didn't come from a rich family. So they came from, his people were poor white folks. So they would make him stand the table and fan the table with a paper fan. In some cases, peacock feathers. But in this case, the punka was an actual wooden fan, massive wooden fan. Remember, this is Mississippi before air conditioning. That chair is where the little enslaved boy sat. And he had to pull it to make sure the white folks were cool and the flies were off the table. Sometimes they would actually be like a swing. They put a little kid in, and the act of swinging fanned the table, and they would use a peacock feather to get the flies off the table. Yeah. That is, when other people see this, they go, oh my God, look at the craftsmanship, and I'm going, this is, it freaks me out. It's very deep. I'm looking at this with not awe, but just kind of like terror. Because there's also, they showed me that there was a spot, there's actually a hook on the side of the mantle of the fireplace. That's where they kept the whip, the bull whip, if the little boy or girl fell asleep, and would discipline them right then and there in front of the guests. And then you know, we talk about the table. So, you know, on TV and in living history museums, everybody's dressed up very nicely. But I didn't realize that a lot of times, on some plantations, not all, it's very important, slavery was colloquial and discretionary. So I can't tell you how one thing was for all. But this one reference from Maryland really just creeped me out. It was early, middle, maybe 1810s in Maryland, and a 16-year-old boy was waiting table, and he had no pants. He was wearing a toe shirt, which are very uncomfortable, by the way. Scratchy wool, made out of wool and linen, and they were long. And this is really weird because, you know, typically domestic staff in slavery were kept very nice looking so that nobody could say that you treated your niggas bad. That was a big no-no. You didn't want people to think that your house Negroes looked bad, like pets, like almost like, oh my God, he's hurting his poor dog. That's how people looked at black people back in the day. Only in this plantation, they thought it was cute that this 16-year-old boy had no pants on. How do we know this? Because the people writing about it described how big his. And I just thought, this is gross. This is painful. This is, to me as a black man in this country, especially as a black gay man, this is really, I want to go back in time, give this brother some pants, and give him a Rand McNally Map to Freedom GPS system. And some money. so he can disguise himself till he gets to Canada. You know, for real. Because I just could tell there's some issues going on here. Because who saw 12 Years a Slave? Yes, that was if you saw it and you dealt with it, good. Because to me as a historian and as somebody who interprets slavery, it's probably one of the most authentic depictions of slavery. The most creepy moment in that movie isn't the beatings; it's when the master has a little girl on his shoulder. That I wanted to go in the movie, rip her out off his arm, and run. Because I know what's going on. I want to just take her away. And then these women were at the table with no shirt on. I mean, advertised as, I just thought, oh, this description of the scene was just horrible. So other people look at the dining room table and they see grandeur and Southern hospitality, and I see horror. And that's why I do what I do, because on the one hand, I want to bring people together, and I want people to understand that food is food is a connector and food is a part of us all. On the other hand, I want people to understand that the power dynamics of those tables and those kitchens filters down to us today. It filters down to us in so many different ways. Very political. So I want to say one more thing, and then I'm going to ask you for any questions you have. And that one more thing is, it really is important to understand, when we see popular depictions of this legacy. So, for example, The Help. That dynamic. Or the dynamic of movies about Black empowerment, Black resistance to slavery. That we understand that food was an incredibly important part of that. And that we understand that our tradition has been one of, entrepreneurial success as well. I mean, Black men and women used food to get out of slavery, either through freedom seeking. They became, we talked about James Hemings last night. I'll forever talk about him right now. But James Hemings was enslaved to Thomas Jefferson and gets his freedom because he's this great chef. And he's probably the most well-trained chef in early America, having learned how to cook at the court at Versailles. Nobody had that kind of culinary pedigree in the 1800s and 1700s in America. Nobody. He may have taught or had a hand in teaching Solomon Northup. Speaking of 12 Years a Slave, his wife was a chef, a French-trained chef who was illiterate. And that's how he got kidnapped, because the family got separated because she was going to cook at the hotel in Saratoga. And he was going to go make his money being a musician. And then he got kidnapped. So this food thing is very important. But these tavern owners, Black men left the plantation kitchen and became tavern owners. Now, in terms of resistance to slavery, I should probably mention this. The reason why you see a shift to Black female cooks, because Black female cooks typically had kids. If I'm going to run away from slavery, what better place to be in with no children, very few family connections, and I know how white people dress, how they talk, how they walk. To you, that's nothing. But remember, if you lived in one of those field quarters, and you're separated from white people, and how they interact, their culture, you don't know how to speak outside of plantation Creole. So the way you talk is a dead giveaway. That's why when you read runaway ads, it always describes how the Black people talk, because that gives a dead giveaway. So if I'm in the field, how to do, massa? How to do today? What them got Jim Peachy? How you doing, master? You brought me some peaches? Versus, good morning, master. You're literally trained to talk that way. Which is really funny, because Charles Dickens says that the Black domestic servants talk better than the white women that they served. Because the white women they served grew up learning this. Gullah, Jamaican patois. They didn't, Haitian Creole. They did not speak, those white women were raised by Black women. They lived on plantations, but they were the white minority. Their speech patterns and choices for what they ate were all affected by Africa. So it's really, Charles Dickens was furious with women in Charles and Savannah. He was like, they don't speak proper English. This is why the Southern boys were sent up here, like Robert E. Lee. Why did he go to West Point? Why did they send them to boarding schools in the North? So the little boys would stop being so Black. Remember that Huck Finn thing? That's real. Remember that book was Huck Black? Yeah, it's because those little boys learned how to be men by trailing behind Black men. So there was a whole creolized society where it was a total mix-up. But my point is that when running away from slavery, who's going to be better off in Boston? Mr. in the waistcoat and vest and the nice clothes and he can speak a certain way, or the person from the field who is totally culturally in exotic space when he goes into a majority white environment? Who's going to be better off? A woman who has 2 or 3 children who she can't risk bringing with her on the road. What's better for her? To protect them and make them household workers so that they can possibly stay in the family, or if they get sold together? Or take the risk of running with her children or making a decision, I can only take this child but not this child, which for any parent would be heartbreaking. And some people actually had to do that. Some people actually had to make the choice of, I'm going to take this kid but not this kid. So just think about that. And so when they go up north, they become tavern owners, restaurateurs. One of them, Henry Dorsey, is such a great cook that when they actually catch him in Philadelphia, the Quakers bought his freedom, brought him back, and gave him down payment money so he could finish his brick and mortar restaurant. There are women who brought their husband's freedom by growing tomatoes and cooking. Women who own bake shops, who bought their children out of slavery. So when I teach our young people of all colors about this heritage, I don't want to teach them about the whipping and the this and the that. I want them to understand that food is a source of empowerment, that this is their heritage. That no, going in a garden don't make you no slave. Putting your hands in the soil don't make you no slave. I heard it so many times. My grandma used to say, I can count. She used to say, boy, you need to get naked to count 21 and figure things out. We all figure that out, bro. You get the naked to count. Ooh. Yes, she said that. And I say, all right, grandma. And she would tell me, no, every time you go in the soil, it's, giving you life. But I've heard so many times in my life, I ain't no slave, why you want me in that garden? We ain't slavery no more. You don't know what go in the garden don't make you enslaved. It makes you a person who can feed themselves. Y'all see what Killer Mike said about Black Empowerment and Revolution. He asked the audience in Atlanta, you know how to fish? You know how to hunt? You know how to raise an animal? You know how to raise a garden? The same, 10 country people raised their hand. And the vast majority said no. They said, you ain't ready for a revolution. If you can't feed yourself despite what other people tell you what to do, you ain't ready for a revolution. What are they doing in Charlotte? People started rioting and taking their power back. And some of them were crooks. Don't get me wrong. Some of them took it out, did what people always do. They take advanced situations, did awful things. But what they try to do, the vast majority of law-abiding people who were trying to protest and make their voice heard, they said, we will take away your food benefits. So food is still being used as a means of control and power. So we have a lot to learn from these folks. Because if I told you about a group of people who were entrepreneurial with food, who were innovative, who were creative, who ate organically, ate local, composted, lived sustainably with the environment, you'd say, who are these amazing people? Let's put them on the cover of Time right now. And I'm like, my ancestors. And that's the heritage that a lot of us come from, no matter what our background is. So thank you very much. If there's 1 or 2 questions, I'm happy to answer. No people have to run, but I'm happy to answer 1 or 2 when people do their thing. Thank you so much. Sure.
You said you had a story about food trucks.
Right. Starbucks. All right, Starbucks are really fast. So back during the Civil War, Black folks grew a ton of okra. And this is documented all over the place. Okra. And so what they would do with okra seed was parch it and make it into fake coffee during slavery. So when the different armies would come during their battles, they had a little real coffee ration. What they would do is they take the coffee ration with the dead bodies, mix it with the parched okra, and when the next army came through, the north or the south, they would basically sell them this fake coffee. That's why I told you Black folks invented Starbucks. There you go.